Okay,
Ready?
ready.
Okay, I would like to call into session the April 27th meeting of the Larkspur Planning Commission. Can I have a roll call, please?
Where'd you go?
Let's see, I'll go from my top to bottom. Chair Wagstaff,
Here.
Commissioner Swisher,
Here.
Commissioner Chalmers,
Here.
Commissioner Tauber,
Here.
and Commissioner Kunstler.
Here.
All present.
Welcome, everybody. As you all know, this is a remote meeting still, and if anybody wants to join, there is a link in the agenda. There is also, if you want to call in for a particular item, there is a call-in number on the upper part of the agenda. So if anybody would like to speak on matters not on the agenda, please go ahead. Seeing none, I would ask for the director's report.
Okay, thank you, Chair Wagstaff. As I had sent out a message, and I do apologize a little late in the process, but earlier today there was a community outreach event. The Public Works Department is soliciting, providing information and soliciting comments on both a downtown sidewalk plan. There is a plan to begin doing more accessibility improvements to the sidewalks and the intersections. And also feedback on the parklets. As you're aware, as a result of COVID, many cities and agencies have been expanding the allowances for outdoor dining to include more sidewalk dining and also street dining in areas typically reserved for public parking spaces along streets. And so, you know, there and the city manager was granted emergency authority to be able to grant encroachment permits for those types of improvements. Additionally, we have Kristen as the zoning administrator with the city manager's authority has been granting a number of permits to use private parking areas, private parking lots for outdoor dining and other similar activities, exercise, things like that out at Marin Country Mart. There's probably fewer of those permits, but we do have quite a number of parklets. So the Public Works Department is requesting feedback on parklets. There is some discussion in amongst other communities that potentially parklets might be seen as a more common or an ongoing occurrence even after COVID. And outdoor dining to really encourage economic development and walkable communities. So I think that's going to be a continuing discussion. And they did have a walk-up presentation outreach today in the downtown, and they will be holding a event online on May 4th. That will likely be a little more towards the evening. The time and the invite has not yet been set for that, but when I see it, I'll send that out to the commissioners as well. Also, on next Thursday on the 29th, we're going to be holding a public workshop for the Climate Action Plan update. For the last 3 years, planning staff has been working with the Marin Climate and Energy Partnership on a collaborative effort to update our climate action plan along with other agencies throughout the county, basically following lessons learned and best practices in an ever evolving field of new technology, new sustainable practices, new grant opportunities, just all sorts of changes going on. And I think everyone understands climate is a significant issue, and it's becoming a more significant issue as we begin to see the effects of sea level rise and the impact of climate on our weather. And now that we're entering another drought, clearly this is a issue of heightened concern. The Climate Action Plan is not an end-all be-all solution. It is really a series of goals and programs that the city can engage in for both city activities and city facilities, as well as collaborative efforts and efforts to do outreach and engage the community in achieving more sustainable practices and to reduce GHG emissions throughout the community. Our climate action plan is largely designed in from the San Rafael plan that was adopted in 2019. And also the County of Marin has recently adopted its climate action plan. So a lot of the framework and the goals and policies of our plan are taken from those plans, as well as some of it from Fairfax, which is in the process of reviewing and adopting its plan. So we have made a preliminary presentation to the City Council, kind of unveiling the climate action plan, and it is now available. I've sent you the link to the website, and we'll be having a public workshop on that next Thursday evening, and you're all invited to attend and provide some input. It is anticipated we'll be returning to the City Council with updates based on public comments and input sometime in June. So if you have any other questions or thoughts, feel free to give me a call, or you can send them to me. And beyond that, we are currently in City Hall planning and building operations. We're currently beginning a recruitment for an associate planner position that's been identified in our budget. We do have a part-time planning technician now coming to assist our full-time planning technician, Jim Harrigan, helping with building permits. We've certainly found through this long process, the building permit level of activity has remained fairly constant and continues to be pretty busy as we're in the spring buildings approaching the summer building season. We are also engaged to bring on a part-time code enforcement officer through a company called Four Leaf that would be working 2 days a week. We have been in discussions with some adjacent communities on sharing that service because there are other communities that have either full-time or part-time code enforcement support. And there's been discussion on creating a shared position, but that hasn't come to fruition yet. So we're now going to go ahead and contract that out on a part-time basis. That will be helpful for our operations, as Kristen has been sort of fielding the code enforcement issues over the last several months. And while it was somewhat quiet during last fall and over the winter, it certainly is picking up. And we do experience a lot of code enforcement complaints, a lot of nuisance complaints, largely related to, to some degree, I think a lot of people are more working from home and very sensitive to the world around, the environment around their neighborhood. So we're certainly experiencing some of that. So that's some of the latest going ons in our department, and I'll be happy to talk with you some more on any of those topics. Do you have any questions?
Just, Neil, just a quick comment. I did go to the Parklet presentation today. And it's really great work that they've done. You know, they're giving everybody the opportunity to say what they like, what they don't like, either with their little red and green stickers, or if they want to add some more verbiage to that, they made provisions for that as well. So it was actually a pretty good event.
I look forward to hearing the feedback, and because I do think it will play into somewhat into our approaches towards parking standards and uses, outdoor activities in the commercial zones areas.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I see where there's 5 attendees, and I would ask again if anybody has any items they wish to discuss that are not on the agenda. Please raise your hands if you do. You see any hands raised?
No.
Okay, with that, I would go to the public hearing items. There are no consent items, and the first item and only item is 25 Onyx Court. Could we please have the staff report?
Good evening, Chair Wagstaff and members of the commission. First, I'd like to indicate that we've received one piece of late mail, and it's from a neighbor who opposes the project, basically for reasons that the existing fence does not meet code requirements, while other fences in the neighborhood meet the requirements of the municipal code for fences. So I'd like to begin to indicate that the applicant is requesting permits to construct a 319 square foot studio space below the existing carport on this 7,298 square foot parcel. They're requesting a design review permit, a floor area ratio exception permit, a variance, and a fence height exception. The subject property is in the Madrone Canyon neighborhood. It has an average slope of 41%, and there is a 12-foot wide public access easement that abuts the front of the property, which provides access from Onyx Street to properties all along Onyx Court. The proposed exterior materials and colors will match the existing house. In terms of the design review permit, staff finds that the findings can be made as the finished materials are attractive and consistent with the criteria for approval of applications. The proposed addition is minor in scale and located below the existing car deck. It will be difficult to view it from the street or surrounding properties, and the proposed addition and site will remain compatible with the prevailing neighborhood character and scale. The studio will be repurposed. We'll use repurposed space under the crawl space below the existing car deck. And so it's not going to be visible from the street frontage or adjacent properties. This addition will not result in significant impact to privacy, access, light, air, or views from neighbors or adjacent properties. As designed, the proposed studio minimizes any sense of excessive bulk, as would be seen from the street along Onyx Court. And finally, with the proposed siding, trim work, and color palette to match the existing house, it'll allow the site to remain compatible with the adjacent residences and surrounding neighborhood. In terms of the floor area ratio permit, the findings can be made. Staff did prepare a survey of the neighborhood FARs for the site and surrounding development. And with the addition of the studio, it would remain below the average floor area in the neighborhood and within the range of lots of similar sizes. And then repurposing the area beneath the car deck is sensitive to its surroundings by not adding the visual bulk and mass. There will be a large redwood tree to be retained on the north side of the property line, and it does utilize the existing materials and colors of the existing house. In terms of the variance to the front setback, It is a very steep slope of lot at a relatively small size, and the existing built condition results in constrained circumstances, which limits the possible locations of adding an addition to the site while meeting all the zoning standards. The strict application of the title would deprive the property of privileges enjoyed by other properties in the area and the R1 zoning district. In terms of the fence height exception, the fence actually exceeds the allowable height limit, which is the reason why the fence height exception is necessary. However, while the materials and design of the fence are considered generally acceptable in the neighborhood, staff has issue with the fence placement as it appears out of character with other fences in the vicinity. The fence juts out into the edge of the roadway, crowds the road, and blocks the sight lines for vehicles when backing out from the subject driveway onto Onyx Court. This is considered a safety hazard. So staff does find making the findings for fence height exception finding number 1 is somewhat questionable. So we're recommending as a condition of approval that the fence be realigned further onto the parcel, particularly the section closest to the car deck, to open up the sight line and create a safer passage for vehicles and pedestrians along Onyx Court. This would provide greater openness to the street by being set back from the roadway and would conform to other fence designs in the neighborhood. In terms of public comment, in addition to the late mail, we did receive one message prior to publishing the staff report, and that was in support of the project, and it was from an adjacent neighbor. So with that, I'd like to recommend approval of the project with the recommended condition of approval requiring modification to the alignment of the front yard fence. That concludes my staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions of the commission.
Okay,
I have a question.
Yeah.
It sounds like Daniel does too.
yeah, go ahead, Laura.
On the fence, so I did go and look at the property, and on the other side of the fence, the part of the fence I think that you're concerned about, which I saw what you were concerned about. There's a stone wall and it drops off pretty rapidly, and there's some landscaping and then kind of a walkway that leads to the house. And there's really no room for them to move the fence closer to the house. So I'm wondering if they made the fence shorter, like there's a fence that I guess belongs to the neighboring property that is lower, if that would address your concern.
I think if the fence were lower, but if the fence were more open in its construction so that there is more visibility through the fence, that would help quite a bit. The problem is the fence is so high at this point and juts out into the into the roadway, that what happens is you really can't see around it when you're in the car trying to back out of that space or out of the driveway. So it would be a lot better if the design were more open, as well as not just being shorter.
So if it was more open and lower, the placement of the fence would be okay to you?
It would be an improvement over what exists right now.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Okay,
Laura,
Excuse me,
Laura,
sorry,
as you-
Daniel, just
Yeah.
one quick question I wanted to follow up on that as a director. Kristen, can you remind us what the height is for fences within the front yard setback in
42 inches.
within view triangles?
It's a 15-foot sightline triangle, and it's 42 inches.
So 42 inches within the sightline triangle. Are you sure
Well,
that's-
within a front yard setback, but in particular, if it was right next to the driveway and was only 42 inches, the city considers it not a hazard.
Can I'm sorry.
42 inches is 4 feet. Are you sure it's not 30? I thought it was 30
No, it's
inches.
3.5 feet, 42
Yeah,
inches.
That's correct.
So I think part of the problem too, at least as I read the drawings, is the property line actually goes out into the roadway. So
That's
there
correct.
is a setback from the property line, but it's actually in the pavement. But it's probably not, it's not, looks like it's 6 feet. Or a little over 6 feet. So it's not as much as
That's
it
correct.
would be required to be. So this is just a little bit complicated is all.
Just for clarification, our code doesn't allow you to include a roadway as part of your setback. Their property line, their front property line is actually the edge of the easement.
Okay, thank you.
So, Laura has this ability to read my mind, so that question I was going to ask is pretty identical. But just one clarification, though. Should there need to be some kind of a compromise because of the limitation on how much further into the property a fence can actually be replaced because of the topography of that particular site? Can the zoning administrator actually approve a compromise that would include maybe not quite as much of a setback as we would like, but with a shorter fence? Is the zoning administrator able to do that?
Did I answer that?
Well, I'm not quite sure. The reason I'm asking is that if we can go ahead, we'll see what transpires, but if the commission chooses to approve the project with a condition of modification of that fence, that modification might be a combination of having it in better compliance with the setback requirement, combined perhaps with a change in the actual in the fence itself, either its height or its morphology.
Certainly, as zoning administrator, I'd be willing to work with the applicant on some creative solutions. 42 inches right up to the property line, which is the roadway easement, would be acceptable and it doesn't require zoning administrator authorization. But if they want something taller within the front yard setback, then they do have to have ZA approval.
Okay, but it would not necessarily have to come back to us.
Correct.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you. I'm sorry if I garbled my question.
So let me ask you one question. Is the fence as it currently exists, it is not in compliance? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So one of the issues that will hopefully come up is that if they wanted a higher fence, and a lot of people do for deer reasons, et cetera, if it was a see-through fence or something like Daniel was just mentioning, using the word morphology, that we could change the design of the fence to make it so it's not opaque. And that could be a potential solution too, correct?
That would be a solution if it could be relocated somewhat further back, even if it can't go as far back as the setback.
Yeah, but I mean, even if it couldn't, it sounds like looking at, at the property, and I rode my bike by it as well. It seems like it's going to be difficult to move that fence back, but if it could be changed so that it was actually see-through, I mean, like lattice, or not open lattice, big open lattice with chicken wire or something. Anyway, but let's listen to what people have to say.
I think the combination of the two could work.
Okay.
I had one last question, which I couldn't get off the drawings. How many other houses are up the street? Does anybody know?
I believe there's roughly six properties up the street from it. It wraps the corner a bit too. So I think it's about 6 properties when you include wrapping the corner.
It might be a few more because there's some properties on Magnolia that actually only have parking off of Onyx Court.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from anybody? Any other commissioners? That being said, I would ask if the applicant would like to make a presentation, or the architect.
Let me,
I see a hand. I see two hands.
okay, so we're gonna go first with the applicant, who I believe the property owner is Armand Ruiz. Armand, you can talk now. And you need to unmute yourself, please.
Hi, yes, this is Armand. Thank you for your time. So just wanted to mention we are building this studio to make it a home office space in order to continue working from home. We both work remotely, and we're going to continue working remotely moving forward after this COVID period. And yeah, and regarding, there is a concern about this business that we have for homemade jams from Marin, one of the notifications from one of the neighbors. I just want to mention that we both work full-time at IBM, and we're very busy, and this is just a side hustle. We sell on the farmers market twice a month, and we had absolutely nobody this 2021 coming to pick up any jam to our location. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. I see another hand up. Maybe you can.
We should just make sure that the other applicant, Juancho, is also the architect. Does anyone need to speak to him before we proceed to the public?
No.
Okay. Then I'm gonna, Laura Eiffel, you may speak, and you do need to unmute yourself, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I addressed this in my email, but I didn't hear anybody mention it. I would like to know whether the new use for this the studio would impact parking. Part of the website for the jam business says that you can pick up a merchandise at the location where it's made at 25 Onyx. And I take it they haven't been using it for that purpose, but I don't think a good evaluation of this project can be made without knowing whether there will be any impact on traffic. As you know, there's not much room for parking there, and there isn't much room for parking in that neighborhood altogether. So if someone could address that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Yeah, hi, this is Armand. I just want to mention two things. One is the purpose of the studio is to have a home office to work on our full-time jobs. And I'll be happy to share the reports on our sales on the jam. We had no pickups so far, so I don't think that's a concern. And then I just wanted to mention as well about the fence. As it was mentioned, we bought the house with the fence already built, and we have actually trees right behind the fence. So it will be kind of challenging to move the fence because we have we'll have to go around the trees or do something pretty creative there. And yeah, we'd like to try to avoid to do any works on the fence to do the studio on the other side, which is what we were wishing for. Thank you.
Thank you. I see one other hand up. Is there anybody there?
That's the, Armand, did you want to keep speaking? Okay.
Okay, seeing no one else, I would bring it back to the commission. And I would like to start out with Chairman Kunstler.
Thank you. Okay, so I really can't find anything particularly objectionable about the work on the studio and creating a home office, there. Um, there's certainly soil removal has not been, not been an issue. Lot coverage really is not an issue. In this particular instance, the floor area ratio really doesn't change. So the actual modification to the habitable part of the property is actually pretty small and barely material. So my only issue would be how we ultimately resolve the issue of the fence, or what kind of formulation we put as a condition of approval. I personally would be fairly adamant in wanting to require some kind of a modification of the fence. I do realize that actually moving it would be difficult, probably move it a little bit, but certainly shortening it and changing its design is something that can probably be accomplished. I looked at the property, and shortening the fence or having something which is more see-through really would not impede on the privacy of the property, because there's a fair amount of screening there in front of the property. And actually, in addition to that, actually fairly little passage on that street. So where I come down pretty much is, yes, I can make the finding for the studio, but would like to see some kind of a condition of approval that would adequately resolve the fence issue, because it is an issue. And that's it. You're muted, Brock.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Swisher.
All right, so I'm in favor of the project. I think it's great to it's a very creative way of making a home studio without any significant impact. Obviously, the fence is an issue, and unfortunately for Mr. Ruiz, he inherited this fence. And this is a very common problem in Larkspur, where there's a lot of fences which are out of compliance. But I think that it would not be difficult to make this fence, even if you kept the same height, somewhat see-through, by changing the design of the fence and without having to impact the trees behind it. So I'm in favor with some working with the zoning administrator to modify the fence to make it so that it's not opaque and interferes with parking. So I would vote for finding for this with that exception that we have to work on the fence.
Thank you. Commissioner Tauber.
I think it was me.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm fine with the studio workspace. It's kind of tucked away, hidden. It doesn't impact anybody. It's a creative use of what is otherwise basically unusable space. So for all the reasons everybody already said, I think I'm fine with that. It does come down to the fence, and I think the fence is too high. It is definitely, if it was that high for privacy of the house, nobody's 6'11", or almost nobody. It really doesn't need to be that high. So if the zoning administrator can work with the applicant to come up with something that makes it more see-through, shorter, meets the needs of being able, not being blocking the visual, safety issues. But I really don't think that requiring them to move the fence is realistic. There really is no place to move it to. I think the only thing you can do is make it shorter or make it less opaque. But I think I would rely on Kristen to be able to figure out what is appropriate.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chalmers.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to start by acknowledging the comments from the neighbors. There was the neighbor immediately next door, I think it, number 23, was in support of the project, and also the email. And we heard the owner of, I think, 11 Onyx, who also spoke tonight. So I heard the objections. I think they were, from my opinion, answered by the owner of the property, that this space is going to be used as an office and not going to be producing jams and distributing jams, you know, for pickup. So I did want to acknowledge the comments that came in from them. From my perspective, I agree with the prior commissioners. I think from the design review and floor area ratio, and this doesn't really, has very minimal impact. You know, it's a good use of the space. It's a very unique use of the space. And I'm very impressed by the engineering, having gone down to see it. It's not visible from the street, and the setback variance, I can also make the findings for that, because it is a very difficult site. It's very steep with limited options. And again, I also agree with the commissioners on the fence. Actually, my initial reaction was that it wasn't as imposing as I expected it to be, but I do see that it does narrow the road and does limit sort of the line of sight. So if there's something they can do with that, and I'm sure that the owners can work with Kristen, the zoning administrator, to come up with a good solution on that.
Thank you. And I basically agree with what everybody said. I think the fence should be lowered to 42 inches as the solid part of the fence. And I've seen, in fact, in my house, I use 4x4 wire, and it's pretty aesthetic, and you can see through it. So I would leave that up to Kristen to work with the applicant, and I think the addition is about as innocuous as you can get, and I would be in support of the project. So I would ask that somebody make a motion.
Yeah, Brock, just want to point out one thing on page 6 of Lorraine's report, where the conditions of approval are listed. Under project approval, condition 1A, it states the applicant shall submit a revised fence placement for the front yard fence to remove obstructions and improve sightlines. I think that can simply be modified to say the applicant shall submit a revised fence placement and design. That would allow the zoning commissioner to come up with a sort of an integrated solution for the fence.
I think that's fine. I don't personally think that the placement is so bad, but
yeah, but
that gives her flexibility.
Yeah, that gives the flexibility to sort of offset the limitations on changing the placement with improvements of the design.
Okay.
You want to say placement and or design?
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
So do you want to make a motion that we would?
Okay, so I'll move to approve application for design review floor area ratio exception variance. And I think I have to say also, and fence height exception for number 2105 for 25 Onyx Court, under the condition as noted on the report that the applicant shall submit a revised fence placement and or design.
With that modification. To the
Yes.
I could second that. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
It passes. I think the next item is the approval of the minutes. Would somebody?
Before you move on, I'd like to just make a couple points, Chair Wagstaff. One is just to respond to Ms. Eiffel's concerning in question about the home occupation or the business and production of jams. The home occupation restrictions really don't specify that you cannot have anybody come to the business. It actually allows for a variety of businesses, which may include music teaching, or even doctors can have home visits. It just requires that you have no more than one person attending at a time. So as long as it's not an open retail type open door, that would not be inconsistent with the home occupation permits. And the County of Marin does allow small food production through health department permits. And with that said too, is if a business is such that it becomes a nuisance, or they're storing or creating traffic or advertising externally, those would be in violation of the home occupancy restrictions. Then the other point to make before you close is that the decision may be appealed within 10 days to the City Council.
Correct. Do you know if they have a home occupation permit? Just by,
I actually do not know.
and I guess I felt that was really not our purview. This was sort of about the design and the fence of the.
That's right. It is not our purview.
Yeah.
So, so what, let's see. I guess, did we approve the minutes? Like,
Not yet.
did somebody, could somebody move to approve? The
I
minutes?
will move to approve the minutes
Do we have a second?
of
I can
March
second.
23rd.
Okay. And we had a second. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Does any of the planning commissioners have reports? I have one thing I would like to suggest, maybe when you send out the agenda, or maybe even online, the Zoom is highlighted. I was met by somebody who said they didn't think there was a number for call-in. And in the upper part of the page, it's again, the video teleconference is highlighted, but the call-in number is not. And maybe that could be done. It's really, I said I would ask, so here I am.
Well, the problem with the highlight signifies a link, where the phone number is not a link.
So
So that could be a little confusing.
Does the city council have a call-in number that you can actually link to the meeting? Because this is James, so.
I think we do it the same as the city council. This is the same.
That's what I mean, the city council, yeah.
And they would call in this number and that would call into the meeting.
Right, and so if they call that number, the 669, would it call into our meeting?
Kristen?
I'm
No,
sorry,
you
what?
You still have to give the ID. So
Yeah,
what
you
would
have to use the
happen is-
webinar ID and punch it into the keypad.
Yeah, so what happens is that's the Zoom number. You would call that number and then they ask you for the meeting ID, and then you would have to type in the 933-2945, et cetera, number.
So I guess what this person was saying was that he didn't think there was a call-in number at all. And I thought there was, but I'm walking on the street, so.
It's not a call-in number like a regular teleconference. It's still a Zoom number. It's just using audio instead of, the web.
Is there a way to have a call-in number? Does the city council have a call-in number?
Yes, they have the same setup as we do.
Okay,
We basically mimic their approach. That's why
So
Um,
with Zoom, you can either use it as like a video, like we are all on right now, or you can use it as audio only using a telephone. And you call in the telephone number and then you type in the meeting ID and it will connect you by just audio.
Okay. I don't know that there's a solution to what they were asking, but I thought we had a number, but I wasn't sure. So there is a
Okay.
number. Okay.
And be sure to let them know to contact us. We'll try to reach out. I'm not sure. I think we have James' number, but
Probably.
we'd like him to participate.
Yeah. Okay. Would somebody like to adjourn the meeting, or can we just adjourn the meeting?
Can I just, there seems to be an attendee that has his hand up. I don't know if he's meaning to have his hand up or it's just an accident. It's
I think it's
I
still.
have allowed him to talk. Michael Simon, if you'd like to speak.
Hi.
he was a neighbor.
Yeah, I'm the neighbor, and I'm supportive of the project. So thank you for approving that. But the reason I raised my hand is I tried to call that number a couple of times, and it doesn't seem to be a Zoom number. It seems like you might want to check the number because it says it's disconnected. So I just thought I'd mention that to you in case the number is incorrect.
Maybe it's the wrong phone number.
That's what
Thank
comes up.
you.
And
Thank you.
that's something we'll need to check, because I think there may be an issue with that number changing on occasion or for meetings.
Okay. I just wanted to follow up.
But I think it's a standard number, and then as Laura said, the ID is what brings you to the specific meeting.
Right. So if you look at the highlighted, the HTTPS, the 933.294, it's the same number. You see that in the blue?
Mhm.
That's the meeting ID. That's how it knows, where to go.
Right.
And that's the same number for every meeting? Or does that change?
It changes.
I'm gonna
Every
just,
meeting has its own unique number.
So if the number didn't change, you couldn't get in.
So there should be one standard phone number. So that 669 number, I don't know if that's a good number or not, but basically the way Zoom works is like I said, you can call on a phone and there are a series of phone numbers that you can dial to get into Zoom. And then it will ask you for your meeting ID and you type in, on the keypad, you punch in the number for your meeting, and that it will take you to audio to your meeting.
well, all I can tell you right now is that's the exact same number that's on the last city council meeting from the 21st. We hadn't heard of any issues with them.
Well, the easiest thing
I'll
to do
double
would
check
be to,
with-
if you want, I'll try calling it right now and see if I can get in. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, go
Right.
ahead.
Should I go ahead and end the recording?
Yes, please. Thanks, Kristen.
Have we
Officially
Can
adjourned?
we, let's adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I'm telling you, I just dialed into that number and it does take you to Zoom.
okay. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear it.
We'll make sure it's working.
Okay,